Sometimes you'll go out with someone or you meet someone and you're just like, there's something here that doesn't add up.
Yes.
And it might be those evolutionary triggers coming in that you can't quite describe, but you even see that the way they look at you and then they look aside and they look at you and these small tells that they might be lying, but you don't know necessarily to decode that at the moment. But that's just like our DNA coming in. There's something off here. Gary, I have a sneaky intuition that today's podcast is going to be a little bit of a romance killer, but it's going to be extremely helpful for those of you who are figuring out, is he the one, and trying to just navigate your love life. And I know you like this topic.
I love this topic. And I think you're right. I think a lot of our things end up a little bit more on the romance killer side. And fine, I own that. I own that. I own that completely. But I think today actually is one of our least romance killer kind of podcasts, because we do what I think we do really well. And it's kind of our bread and butter thing, which is take something that is romantic, but then show how to use that romantic side, our heart feeling side of things, but do it in a strategic way that's actually beneficial to the relationship. And so a lot of times we will say, be strategic, be intentional, be thoughtful, be purposeful, be objective, be logical. And all that, that's what people, that sounds like romance killing, because that's not feelings and that's not going with your heart. But today we're talking about intuition, and we're not going to say, don't follow your intuition, because that would be romance killing, and that's not our stuff. That's not what we do.
I'm just on the romance killing side. I feel like we have a style of trying to kill the romance a little bit through the dating process so that we have a more romantic relationship later. Because look, having a really romantic first couple of weeks, that's all well and good. But if that then leads to a non-romantic next 20 years of your life, that sounds horrible. Yeah. So I'd rather dial back the romance a little bit and learn a little more about strategy and intuition. Rather dial that back a little bit through the dating process so that the rest of our lives can be actually thrive with lots of romance. So, and me and you are like the biggest romantic, we're like such saps. So I know I am.
It's all about playing the long game. And something, like I'm a huge fan of saying is follow your heart, but take a little strategy with you. And so follow your heart is, you can't deny that. That's part of relationships. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you can follow your heart, use your intuition, but do so in a strategic way.
Yeah. So lead us through it. Let's hear it.
So, sometimes there's plenty of things in life where you just want to be super objective in all possible ways, right? Maybe when you're picking a place to live or picking a career or, even choosing a car, you really want to be completely objective. But for better or for worse, when it comes to romantic relationships, that's not how people want to do it.
No,
right?
It's not how we're designed to do it.
Yeah. Like we don't want checklist. We don't want like systems and checklists we want to go with our heart, right? We want to go with our intuition. And so that's all well and good. But what we're going to talk about today, it's a matter of timing. And there's a way to use your intuition, a really, really helpful way. And there's a way to use your intuition that we're going to suggest that you avoid. And so I think it's important for us first to start with just a general definition of what intuition is. And so intuition is your ability to know or understand something without any sort of conscious reasoning. It's not a deliberative thought process. It's more of a gut reaction, a feel, a sense of knowing about, I just sense that this is the right thing to do. Sometimes people will say it's a deep understanding or immediate insight. It's the opposite of strategy, which I think is that's actually what I love so much about today's podcast is we talk about strategy all the time, and intuition is literally the opposite of strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I think with a lot of decisions you make, I always look at 3 areas of my body, and this is weird to say. I think of my head. I always start with my head. Maybe that's because I'm a guy or whatever. I just like, I go into like solution logical mode. Mm-hmm. Second is your heart, just like, what do you feel, your kind of feelings towards the thing. And the third one is just your gut. Like what are you being drawn to? And I would say gut is the intuition side of things. Is that fair to say? Just like, what do you, on the deepest part of your core, what are you feeling about this situation?
Yeah, and I think, when people say go with your gut, go with your feeling, go with your impulse, they're really talking about intuition.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that you asked me about before we started recording was, is it useful to talk about the distinction between emotions and intuition? And I think it is an important distinction because intuition is more just a general sense of knowing and a pull. It's a sense of certainty. Emotions are more a reaction. Somebody
Mm.
can make you feel good, or somebody can make you feel sad or mad or bad, happy or glad. That's all emotion, and that's all reaction to something somebody else is doing. Intuition is from within. It's about you. It's about your general sense of feeling about how to proceed in any situation. And so they're related, but they're quite different as well.
What I sense the difference personally between feelings, my emotions versus my gut, is that emotions tend to be fleeting,
Right.
whereas your gut instinct actually tend to strengthen over time. So if I'm feeling angry or annoyed, by the next day, you wake up the next morning, that's not still there. But if it's a gut instinct that you have, many times if you delay decision, the the stronger that intuition comes along. Sometimes it fades, but
Right.
it's not as volatile as emotions. Emotions are just like our monkey brain, just like going crazy, just like, oh my God, I feel this way. And a lot of people, I think, make decisions based on emotions. And that might even be synonymous with heart, if we were to say that
Mhm.
in some ways. But I think really leaning into your intuition, your gut is very, very empowering. And there's just, we humans have evolved over the past. I mean, we've been around for the past 200,000 to 300,000 years, but we've evolved over millions of years to have this incredible tool, which is our intuition. And to disregard that, I think, would be a huge miss. So, how do we actually do that, Gary?
Yeah, and so I think when it comes to intuition and using your intuition properly, timing is literally everything. And you
Yeah.
have to control and fight against your first impulses because our intuition is automatic and we like to make automatic, quick decisions. There's evolutionary reasons for that. We want to make quick, rapid decisions. Is that animal that I can't quite figure out what it is it a danger to me or not? Like we want to have to figure those things out. The
Yeah.
problem is we know also that our first impressions are sticky, for lack of a better term. They stick around. They're hard to shake. This is some research that Dan Gilbert calls unbelieving, where it's just very hard once we make our mind up about something to change our mind. And
Right.
so when you're using intuition quickly, and that's your first impulse, and we know it's hard to shake, that's great if you're making great decisions. It's problematic though, in the sense that when you're doing this in a dating context, relying on your intuition when you're first meeting somebody, you're relying on this rapid assessment system when literally you have the least amount of information you're ever going to have.
Yeah. Definitely. And I'm finding that. So we have a new program called Lux. It's our highest end white glove service that we have. And for our first 10 clients, I've been doing some sessions with them just to onboard them. And one client was telling me a date she went on, and she was trying to determine if this guy was kind of on her level. She's very successful. Like, I won't get into obviously any of the details there because it's very privacy focused. Very, very, very successful, 0.0001%. And she was trying to determine if this guy was successful, which is a fair assessment. She wants to find her equal. But she went on a date and he was just wearing these very, very baggy jeans, and not in a cool way, right? Like the really, really bad jeans. And her entire assessment was that this guy was just not there, right? So I encouraged her to go on the second date. Just give it a chance because there was a lot of good signals there. And it turns out that he is one of the top executives for again, I can't divulge any information, but let's just say a very, very top company. He's just terrible at style. So it's like overriding. He just has really bad style. Not surprising that guys who really focus on their work may not necessarily have the best style. So that just might be an example of our intuition, our initial gut instinct might sometimes lead us astray because we don't have the full picture. We don't have the information.
Yeah. And when you think about it, when you don't have all the information, what do you rely on? You rely on assumptions, vague feelings, stereotypes. You're
Yeah.
just, oh, baggy jeans must be must not, who knows? Who knows what she's thinking? But I get it. That there's nothing, absolutely nothing about that story that surprises me in any way, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's how we make assessments. And we have to remember too, when dating, early on, when we don't have a lot of information, the one piece that we have a lot of information about is appearance. And then we over index or over optimize on appearance things. And we extrapolate from genes to character to long-term relationship potential, etc. And that is a failed, deeply flawed process. And
Yeah.
so what we're going to try to do today is, with the help of some research from Daniel Kahneman, is show you how to use intuition in a way that short circuits some of those really bad initial impulses, still allows you to rely on intuition, but in a way that's actually useful.
I love it. I love Danny. We're best friends, me and Danny.
Yeah. I was about to call him Danny too, and I'm like, I don't know if we're first name basis. Me and Danny. I've met him actually. He signed a copy of Thinking Fast and Slow for me. I met him at a book signing once.
Love it.
Maybe I can call him Danny and you can't.
He's my boy. I'm going to text him right now and get him on here. All right. Well, for those who don't know, Danny Kahneman is the top psychologist. Gary, I don't do you want to. Yeah, it doesn't even need actually much of an introduction. So he's like the godfather of all this stuff. So
he's fantastic. And so the whole idea with using your intuition better is to extend and improve the process. Now, some people can use intuition really, really well. Those people are usually experts in whatever domain they're talking about, right? Because they have a wealth of experience and information and knowledge. And so their intuition is drawing on a bunch of sources. They're not really sure about what's going on there, but it's subconscious, and that's why they're able to do what they do. It's not that they were born with some special impulse, right? It's like a friend of my dad, he's a great mechanic, really great at cars. He can look at a car and just kind of immediately know if it's worth trying to fix that car. Now, he doesn't exactly know probably how he's making that assessment, but he's basing it on a wealth of information and experience. So
it's pattern. It's pattern recognition, right?
Exactly.
And that's the thing. And for people who haven't dated for people who have gone out on lots of dates, you might have a much better intuition and gut sense than those who haven't dated in 20 years. And that's a very, very important distinction to make.
Yeah. And so we can strategize with this in terms of dating, in the sense that you can use intuition. You just have to wait, and you have to collect more information, gather more knowledge about the person, and then you rely on intuition. So the solution is what I'm calling informed intuition. And so this first step is, before you go out on a date with somebody, before you meet somebody, pick your top 3 to 5 areas. What are the 3 to 5 things that you're going to focus on? And this is important because when you meet somebody, there's almost a million things that are going on. There's how they look, there's how they act, there's their mannerisms, there's how they're treating, people in the restaurant. There's 1,000 things, millions of things to pay attention to. We want you to focus on 3 to 5. It doesn't matter what 3 to 5 they are. Just you pick your 3 to 5. Ideally, you would base these on your love vision, right?
Right. They're not, focus. So what we do with our process, we call them the little love steps, is we have a step called little love step number 2, where we create this love vision. And contrary to most people coming in, it's not just people think that it's going to be a long list of everything that you want. It's actually not. It's very much so a whittled down, very focused, must-have non-negotiables. And then actually it expands our horizon of what we'll consider for guys, because we're actually going to have a very small but focused list. And when you have this, then suddenly when you're going on dating, it focuses you on the things that matter rather than the things that might not matter so much, such as baggy jeans, right? Or there's a number of things, and it's tricky, because if someone does one wrong thing on a first date, sometimes we're very, very quick to write that person off. If they, for example, I went on a date one time with a woman who talked a lot with food in her mouth, and that to me is such a I can't. Yeah, I can't. I didn't even know her, but she's just like, she's eating, and it wasn't like horrible. She's not like spitting food everywhere, but she was talking. And back then, if I could be like, look, man, get focused on the things that matter, because for all we know, she's a wonderful person who just hasn't been taught some very, very basic manners. And, I wrote her off like within literally 30 seconds. I'm like, I could never again.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. I don't know. Dr. Gary would support that. If Dr. Gary were my love coach back then, maybe he'd be like, dude, give her
a second chance.
Yeah, exactly.
maybe don't go to a restaurant. I don't know.
No.
And so, with your love vision kind of as your guide, you pick, like I said, 3 to 5 things. So, but pick good things. How
Yeah.
trustworthy they seem, how kind they seem. Are they interesting? Do they have good listening skills? Some solid character. Again, we're thinking long term focus. We're not focusing on, their hair, their attire, mannerisms, long term stuff. Nothing superficial.
Right.
Then you go out. Okay. You go out and have your date. Your 3 to 5 things that you're focusing on. You're enjoying yourself, all that kind of stuff. Afterward, you go back. Step 2 is you rate your priorities. So as soon as possible after your date, while it's all still fresh, you have, write down on a sheet of paper. Some of our clients, there's one client of ours who's really outspoken, has her black book of notes that she takes after every date. And she raves about it, and it's contagious within all of our clients. Now they all have their own little version of their black books that they're taking notes, it's genius, right? It doesn't seem like something it's not something most people would normally think to do, but they all have these little books where they write down, okay, Frank, and they write down, what Frank was about and some key things. And it's important. You want to do it right after, so it's fresh, so you have it in your mind, and you literally rate these things.
Yeah.
And so you would take something like trustworthiness, and you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1, not present at all, no evidence of this. And again, you're phrasing this in a sense of behaviors. Not did he say he was trustworthy. It's did he show and talk about and kind of demonstrate trustworthiness. 10 would be highly present, right? So it's a simple 1 to 10 scale.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through.
It.
You go through and you rate each one, and you put little notes next to each one, right? And so I came up with a little example one. And so let's assume you're dating Martini Mike, who, we've talked about Bud Light Bobby Bud Light. This is Bobby Bud Light's classier friend, Martini Mike.
Yeah. I like it.
So sounds trustworthiness, sexy. You might give somebody a 4 because he avoided questions about his past and didn't share very much, was kind of elusive with what he was sharing. And so, okay, trustworthy, he only gets a 4. Respectful, only got a 3 because he was rude to the waitress. Listening, 9. He didn't talk about himself. He asked lots of questions. Interesting, had some cool hobbies and interests. Maybe he was a kite surfer. Maybe he drove a Harley Davidson. I don't know. Just saying.
Love him. I love him. Marry him.
And then kindness, you gave him a 6 because he volunteers at an animal shelter. So again, how you rate things is going to be up to you. The note taking, but I'm demonstrating the examples of the note taking because I want to show you the kinds of concrete pieces of evidence that you're using. This isn't reading the tea leaves or trying to extrapolate and trying to like guess about some of these things. These are actual concrete things that he said or did during the date that's evidence of these traits.
Right? Yeah. It's very powerful to do this. And I will tell you, out of personal experience on something else where this is important is hiring people. So I know a lot of you are executives, work in the business world, or, you're hiring in some way, shape, or form. Most people are. And back in the day, like when we were starting Love Strategies, I would go on an interview with someone. I would interview them, like, I like that person. Oh yeah. And I'd get all excited. I'd, be walking and running and like working out, thinking about that person, how excited I am to have them. And that created chaos because that was just purely emotion. I would only hire people I liked. It didn't actually have any real correlation with the job, so on and so forth. And now, we're growing a lot. We're hiring a lot right now. And we use hiring matrix. It's very basic. You sit down, think about what is key for this particular job. What are we looking for? And then right after, you have to mark down on a scale of 1 to 10, how do they meet that criteria? And then when you actually add up the totals, now you might not do this necessarily for dating, but for us, you add up the totals. You're like, actually the person that I didn't like as much is actually a much better fit for this. And it's resulted in such a better culture here and such a better team. It's just incredible. So I just think all of this takes the emotion out of it. Trying to dampen the emotion a little bit and lean more into the logical and intuitive side of making a decision is incredibly empowering for long-term success in anything.
Yeah, I like to hear, that the parallels between jobs and interviews and dating, there's a lot of them, right? And I think that one makes sense. It also makes me think to how you hired me, which was, there's a bunch of contestants. We went on some really special dates. And then at the end, you gave me a rose.
I did. What a rose. I got a little smooch too, little smooch on the cheek.
Only smooch because I'm classy.
No, I got lucky with you. That was just love at first sight, and then I was like, I'm in. And then it just got lucky. Let me tell you. So
That's hilarious. So after you make all these ratings, you kind of go through each of your pieces. Then you do step 3, which is your overall impression. So you don't have to add up the numbers. This is where you're just kind of like, what's my overall feel? This is where the intuition comes in. So like Adam was just saying, with when you're hiring, maybe you add up the numbers and you kind of see what. With this, it's you just stand back, look, and just now that you've rated each of those things, what's your gut telling you? What is your intuition telling you now? What's your overall feel? Use your intuition. Again, 110, 1 undateable. No go. Next. 10 would be partner of my dreams. And so if you want to give them an 8, give them an 8. Give them an 8.3. However you want to do it, that's fine. But this is where you rely on your intuition. Okay?
Yeah. I might actually just change this a little bit or give my 2 cents. If it's after a first date, it would really just be the 1 is definitely not, or any rating above that is like, is he worth the second date? Because you're not going to really know if he's the person of your dreams after a first date. I mean, you might feel that might be an emotional side of it that you're excited about, but it's more so like, is he worth more of a time investment? That's really the only thing we're deciding after each stage of this. Is he worth my time? Is there something here? Is there potential for growth?
Yeah, and I think, what I would suggest is on this 1 to 10 scale, you're going to be doing this after each time you go out on a date or see somebody. This isn't just a one-shot kind of thing. But, on that first date, as long as they're not a 1 or a 2, give them a second date. Then after the second date, maybe they can't be a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. And then you go on a third date and you just kind of keep sliding that scale forward. But you're right. It's not, you really do have to make sure you avoid that mentality of, I only go on second dates with 9s or 10s. Because again, you don't have all the information. Right. You really don't know, because you would cross off baggy jeans guy right away. Right. And that's, again, the exact thing we're trying to short circuit. The one other thing you can do to really hone that intuition is, which I'm calling step 4, get a second opinion. Now, a second opinion could be from a friend, a parent, mom, what do you think about this guy? But that's like super awkward. Particularly, every first date, you don't want to have to check in with mom or even a best friend to get them to weigh in every single time. Instead, what research shows is you can get a second opinion from yourself. You can become your own mentor. And so the idea here is what researchers call psychological distance, is you just give yourself a little time and space away from your initial intuition to then go back and reconsider everything. So you'll notice in step 2 and 3, we said, do these ratings right after your date. Put your overall intuition rating down right after. Step 4 is that second opinion, giving yourself some psychological distance. At least sleep on it. Give it a day or 2. And then go back and review all of your notes about Martini Mike and your overall impression, and now see how it feels. Use your intuition a second time with a little bit of time and distance. That's going to give you a fresh perspective.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think the challenge, especially for women getting advice from mom or friends, is mom and friends are almost always going to default to, he's not good enough for you. And it also very much so depends on how you phrase the situation, right? You're like, well, he wasn't actually that funny, but he actually has these qualities and he's okay. They're going to be like, honey, you don't sound that excited about him. Move on, Right. And I think it's either use your own judgment based on what it is we're discussing right now, give it time, or having a coach. Obviously, that's what we do, who actually knows how this process really works to kind of advise you through that situation. Because I see it all the time with our female clients. There's just this default. And I think this is a relatively new phenomenon, especially in the past decade, where almost all women default to, he doesn't deserve you, he's not good enough for you. And I get where that sentiment's coming from. But when men are talking to other men about women, that is not necessarily the conversation that I hear. And that might be a topic of a whole podcast. I know I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but I just find it very, very interesting. So you got to be cautious with asking advice from your peers.
Yeah. And I think, there's a time and a place for peers. I don't know if it's that early on, because as little as you know about the person you're dating and seeing, they know even less. And so until your parents, friends, and they are valuable sources of information, but they need to meet the person. They need to have a sense of them.
Yeah.
There needs to be more time in the relationship for their opinion to really matter and be well informed. Well informed is actually the best way of thinking about it, because at this point, first couple of dates, you're not terribly well informed yourself about this person, and so you can't expect someone else removed from it to know. And so with this psychological distance, like I said, sleep on it. Ideally, give it a couple days. If possible, go for a walk, spend some time in nature, just kind of clear your head of things. And just that way you get a real good second look at it. And then in that second look, you can decide, am I going to go on another date with them? And then there's going to be certain aspects where you're not as sure. That's what then goes into your list about the things you're going to focus on for the next date. So if you focus on trusting and kind and good listening the first one, maybe listening, you're pretty sure about that one, so you don't have to focus on that one the next date. You focus on something different, and you just kind of keep iterating this process, so you start learning more and more, and you use that nice balance of informed intuition, because both are really valuable.
Yeah. And I think that with gut feelings, and just speaking on personal experience, I'd be curious on Danny's opinion. We've got to bring Danny on this podcast. But when it comes to a gut feeling towards the negative, that can typically be a lot stronger than the gut feeling towards the positive. Like sometimes you'll go out with someone or you meet someone and you're just like, there's something here that doesn't add up. Yeah. And it might be those evolutionary triggers coming in that you can't quite describe, but you even see that the way they look at you, and then they look aside and they look at you, and these small tells that they might be lying, but you don't know necessarily to decode that at the moment. But that's just like our DNA coming in. There's something off here. So I would just encourage everyone, and I'd be curious on your thoughts on this, Gary, but I would encourage everyone, when you get that gut feeling that something's really off, be sure to listen to that and not write it off too much. And if the gut feeling isn't super strong on the positive, that's okay. It just might mean that there's not enough information yet. That's how I would look at it.
No, I think that's a really excellent point, in that intuition about safety things. I was just talking last night on one of our masterminds with a client about, she really likes this guy. He seems amazing, but he gives her the ick. Okay, well, what does that mean? And it came down to, it's very similar to, eating food with the mouth open, but she called it ick. But there's a different version of that where you just don't feel totally at ease around somebody. Right? Yeah. It's like you said, some of the shifting of the eyes and just mannerisms and things that maybe, again, that's good intuition. You're not even sure which aspects you're picking up on, but you're definitely picking up on something, which is, again, one of the great reasons why we suggest to clients in the program, get offline as soon as possible and see somebody face to face, because you can pick up on more of those things that someone can disguise over text.
Yeah. Right. That's so true. And you just see if there's misalignment with who they say they are versus who they are in real life. You can pick up on all these subtle cues that you would just never have a chance to, certainly online, but even with a phone call or a Zoom, just being with that person face to face, make it happen. You're going to get a lot of cues, and that's where your intuition comes in strong.
Yeah. And it all comes down to the same thing. Gather more information.
Yeah.
Right. We already name dropped Danny Kahneman in this podcast. I want to name drop one more famous psychologist, Adam Grant. He has a quote about intuition that I love. I say this all the time. Don't trust your intuition. Test your intuition. And that's exactly what we're advocating for here, is you can use it, right? We're not being non-romantic this time. We're saying use your intuition. But like we always say, follow your heart, but take some strategy with you. Do and use your intuition in an informed and strategic way, and it's going to get you where you want to go.
I love it. I can just picture Adam Grant saying that in his like California accent. I don't know if anyone's ever listened to, just trust your intuition. I don't know. I'm so bad at accents.
That didn't sound like him at all, but yeah.
I'm not making fun of him. He's a very it's very distracting when he talks, because he's like, sounds like such a surfer guy, but I really like Adam's work as well.
Super articulate. But yeah, you're right. He's got that kind of vibe about how he speaks about things.
Totally. Agreed. But Gary, that was really fun. I hope everyone got a lot out of this. Be sure to trust your intuition as you're getting out there and do it systematically. We're here for you every single step of the way. Thanks, Gary. That was great.
Thanks, Adam.